Welcome to Mind Mapping by Jim Lindell of Thorsten Consulting. Mind mapping is an interesting process that helps you perform non-linear thinking. The big advantage to the mind mapping process, it allows you to have free thoughts about subjects that can then be organized in a constructive manner. I learned how to use the mind mapping technique in the early 2000s, and once I had adopted it, it is my most standard tool for the start of any consulting project, any course that I'm writing, any speech that I am preparing. At this point in time, my journals probably have in excess of 400 different mind maps, so I am a big believer in utilizing the process. It is also interesting to note that they are teaching our children how to use this process at an early age, and I believe that this will help them in better thinking patterns as they grow older. Where can mind mapping be applied? In a variety of different areas. It can be used as a starting point for your strategic planning process. It can also be used when you begin a SWOT analysis. And remember, the SWOT analysis is the identification of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for an organization. It can also be used for a pestle analysis. And pestle analysis are used many times in marketing analyses, but can also be used in the overall strategic planning process. Pestle stands for P represents the political environment, E, the economic environment, S, the social environment, T, the technological environment, L is the legal environment, and the last D is just the overall environment itself. The key point to the mind mapping is that it is non-linear. Many people, when they try to begin a project or write a paper, they get writer's block. So there is no way for them to get started because they can't come up with the important first phrase. If you recall Snoopy of Peanuts cartoon fame, he would always be typing on the top of his doghouse and would start out with, "It was a dark and stormy night." The beauty of the mind mapping is you can start anywhere. If you want to start simply with the end, you can do so in the map, which you will see in a second. It makes it much easier for a person to take a variety of thoughts, to be able to throw them down on paper, and then to assemble them after the fact. Now, let's consider an actual example of using the mind mapping process. I have selected to use this for disaster planning. Keep in mind this is for illustration purposes, so we won't do a complete analysis of a disaster plan, only due to time limitations and viewers' attention span. A mind map starts out with a blank sheet of paper. In this case, you can see that we're going to put the words disaster planning in the center of the page with a circle around it. At this point, there is no other rules out there other than trying to elicit words and thoughts from participants in the process, or just yourself if you're creating the mind map on your own. At this point, I started to enter the words that came to my mind for disaster planning. You can see them on the page as they pop up. Words such as flood, alternate facilities, policies, insurance, hurricane, etc. Now, the important piece with a mind map is to not put the words down in a linear fashion. I work many times with CPAs, and because of our training, many CPAs will start putting down item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4, and they will switch this exercise from a non-linear exercise to a linear exercise and destroy the value of the mind map. Just place your words all around the page in no order whatsoever. This will help in the overall free flow of thoughts. Now that we have the words around the paper, we're going to do something interesting. We are going to link related words, and in the case that follows, I am using multicolored markers. It is better if you have the different color markers so you can see the chain of thoughts. Once you become accustomed to mind mapping, you may not need the random colors. When I do it now, I just stay with my pen or pencil and I'm able to see the unique relationships. But for starting purposes, use colored pens or pencils. What I do in the first one is I link related words, and you can see with the first color purple, I have linked words such as flood, hurricane, and earthquake. I have also drawn a line from that grouping to the disaster planning, the center of the sheet. The next color that I've chosen is red, and you will see that I've linked the crisis team with public relations and policies together, and then connected that back to the disaster planning center circle. The next color that I selected was a light blue, and you can see that I've linked employees to communication, to continued wages, to death. And I've linked all of that back to the center of disaster planning as well. After I've linked those together, you can see a dark green, and I linked together the concepts of evacuation, backup, and alternate facilities. The last item is just one circle, and it is the word insurance, and I've circled that in black and linked it to disaster planning. Now again, remember, we are keeping this as a simple example. If we were doing this in earnest, we would wind up with a much bigger piece of paper, and we would have a lot more topics grouped together for disaster planning. Once we have the mind map linked together with the different colors, now we reorganize the map and we create the actual plan. So notice now that the purple items that we have circled, those are different types of disasters. We're going to have to talk about that in the plan because some disasters are essential to a plan, and other disasters are normal parts of the business that maybe we don't need to include in a detailed crisis plan. The red color represents policies regarding disasters. We need to have communication policies. We need to identify who is on the crisis team. We need to talk about who is going to be the front line of our public relations effort should a serious disaster happen. The light blue line deals with the impact on employees, and obviously we would have to have a lot of information that deal with how do we take care of our employees, how do we have wage continuation, how do we get the business back up and running so they can be fully employed. It would also have to cover items such as serious injury or the sad event that someone should lose their life. After the employee impact, we then have backup plans. What type of facilities are we going to have to get to? What type of computer systems? What type of backup processes to make sure that we can return our business to a going concern? And finally, the last item, financial impact and response. This was the item that we circled for insurance. There are many items that we'd have to deal with in terms of having business interruption insurance and adequate financial resources to see us through the disaster or crisis event. Therefore, we've been able to take a specific topic, in this case disaster planning. We've allowed our mind to come up with all kinds of different thoughts that would be appropriate for a disaster plan. We have then organized all of the individual items by related categories, and in the end we have the outline that we can then create our detailed plan from. I thank you for sharing your time with me. I'm Jim Lindell of Thorsten Consulting, and I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. Thank you.